Assalamu alaikum. We're continuing in the series of healing in the month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month. We are in the last days of Ramadan, the blessed month of Ramadan, the most blessed days of Ramadan. And today is Friday, a blessed day for the Muslim community. So, today I am going to focus on advice. Ramadan, sort of, if you will, Ramadan helps to humble us, because in the day of judgment, we're not going to be saying so and so and so and so and so and so. We're going to be saying nafsi, 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 which is myself, myself, myself. So everybody will be worried about their state and their reality. And what happens is throughout the year, and you'll notice that most individuals will be like a hawk, monitoring and watching every single person's move, breath they take, and they're sitting on a pedestal correcting and fixing, while they themselves have never ever looked at their own behavior or learned how to even apologize or recognize when they're wrong, or even you could see like they have never went through an accountability process where, like, if there's a dispute, how to resolve a misunderstanding. Never mind that, if you try to work with these individuals or try to engage these individuals, it's a very, very difficult process, if you will, because these individuals love and love to give advice. Their heart is just obsessed with fixing others, that they cannot go beyond looking at other people's what they perceive as their flaws, because they really are looking at their own flaws in the mirror. And because they're always looking, they never look inward. What they see external to themselves is literally a reflection of who they are. And having said that, so you're on the process of healing, and how does this relate to healing? Well, you're going to find so many people that want to give you advice. This person has advice, and that person has advice, and that person has advice, and that person has advice. So I encourage you on that path to hit the brake and hit pause and take a deep breath. Let me walk you through a process that can help you identify how to best know and how to best find people who are sincere and intelligent. Anyway, let's continue. Reflect on this reality. We seek Allah's help amid misfortune, and we turn away when the situation turns to our advantage. Likewise, when people come to seek advice or assistance, they're not necessarily sincere to us. However, they might be honest about their situation. So you may want to reflect on this first, because sometimes the misfortune has to do with how we relate to God, how we engage God, and how we respond when God helps us amid a misfortune. However, these individuals, they might be honest about their situation. So we're in the month particularly of Ramadan, and particularly on Friday, people will be praying in a state of need, recognizing their humanity. But one thing to note is, just because they are sincere and they recognize their humanity doesn't mean that they are sincere to God, or that they are true grateful for being saved or being removed or having this affliction removed. And I mentioned about how to grapple with our helplessness and powerlessness, and I'm trying to struggle now to tie all of these together. Let me step back before I do that and share with you a quote by Ali ibn Abu Talib. Imam Ali, is the cousin of Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings. He's also the first youth that came to Islam. Ali also is, if you will, was married to the Prophet's daughter Fatima. So he's also one of the rightly guided successors to Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings. So we see him as in a position of reverence. Both Sunni and Shia welcome the wisdom, if you will, of Imam Ali. So one of his wisdom is, give good advice to everyone who seeks your counsel, but do not seek the counsel of anyone except the advice of one who's sincere and intelligent. Now, obviously, if you're not going to seek the counsel of anyone except the advice of one who's sincere and intelligent, you're not going to receive the advice of anyone except the advice of one who's sincere and intelligent. So, along this path, like I said, you'll face the advice-a-holics, and they love to give advice. And if you don't receive their advice, they'll say something along the lines, the worst of people are those you give advice to, and they don't receive it. They say, look at yourself. And so you say, okay, let me give you advice. And so you give them advice, and then they become very, very angry, and then you respond with what they said. And you said, the worst of people are those who you give advice, and they don't receive it. They say, look at yourself. So in a nutshell, these advice-a-holics are people who preach what they don't practice. They love fixing others. They don't practice what they preach. And none of us like practices 100%. But I mean, they don't practice hardly any of it. And so what you see is literally an image. A bunch of individuals who've learned how to polish what they say and how to polish their image to the community. So, and a lot of times when they harm people, instead of learning how to apologize or be accountable, they go on this PR charity image thing. So they try to then, as soon as you get into a clash with them, they turn around and they do what every oppressor does, which is they go around and they start to show you themselves giving charity. It's an image thing. So you can tell that these advice-a-holics obsessed with their image, and so behind every transgression, every abuse that they engage in, they turn around with this PR charity image flaunt, if you will. So you want to be careful with people like that. And as you're continuing, I always encourage people to read Al-Fatiha. It is the 7 recited verses of the Quran, and it helps us to seek guidance. So on that path that you are now in misfortune, you're not really praying istikhara, where you're seeking advice about 2 permissible things. This is a situation like where you're seeking guidance because you don't know. Sometimes we are having to make a decision between 2 permissible things. You can seek advice about that. But sometimes you're seeking advice regarding an issue of confusion, in which case you read Al-Fatiha because you're seeking guidance. Now, regarding this particular reality that I pointed out, we can learn from that reality that to acknowledge the seeker's sincerity, like we are turning to God and we're asking for this and we're asking for that towards their situation, but not make it more than that or hold them to sincerity. You cannot compel another to be sincere to you. If we do, we are not sincere to God. Do not seek or accept advice from a selfish person, again, because this limits your activity. This is somebody who loves, for example, to use you for their purpose, but they will undermine your purpose. They love to use you to serve their interest, but they will undermine your own interests. So these are very selfish people who They might even take your ideas or your thoughts or anything and claim it as their own, even though they have clashed with you. They lack the ethics, the humility, to even acknowledge that they used to actually preach something totally different and encourage you to come forth and say, I thought that was kind of interesting. Would you like to, for example, discuss this issue with me further? If they were sincere, because I'd like to know more. They will not respond like that. They will respond by taking and then going and amplifying and making memes and discussions about as though that intellectual property is their own. They'll find famous people, they'll amplify it across the world, and suddenly they claim your intellectual property is their own. So there are those who are the selfish people, and don't take advice from them. They're not sincere. They'll give you advice based on what serves their interest. And you have to be very careful about that, because they will use you and you will be like their guinea pig. And that's literally how they relate to people. Everybody is just, how can I use, and how can I use, and how can I use. There are also the cowards, and this makes you fear what you don't fear. Cowards want you to be afraid of XYZ or ABC. And so they're always giving you advice based on their own reality. Again, they're cowards, and so they want you to fear what you don't fear. And don't take advice from a greedy person, because a greedy person, they all offer you what you don't want. And so they're always in that. It's really about they want more, and I'll give that case scenario now. And because they want more, they'll keep giving you advice based on their own greed. And so you don't actually want this or that, but they'll keep giving you advice for something that you actually don't want. So how can we tell and identify such characteristic traits? If we look back to the podcast on how do we deal with our powerlessness and helplessness, I'm going back to that same case scenario. Actions speak louder than words. We all heard this phrase. It's true, actions can determine who people are, but do not define it according to your personal experience if your experience was a bad one, as this leads to prejudice, and prejudice obscures the truth. Likewise, learn not to expect good character from those you do not know, or people with no joint social or ethical agreement in practice. To develop the ability to identify such traits, learn to listen and connect to weaker people than you or the less privileged. This interaction helps one learn about themselves, train one's weaknesses into strengths, and learn new skills or acquire wisdom. Through this process, we learn mutual benefit. So if somebody wants to, for example, let's just say serve their interests and promote themselves as a writer, then it has to be a mutual benefit. You shouldn't be going around expecting people to share their wisdom with you and you grab it and just keep promoting yourself and knocking people down, undermining them. So we have to learn to look for people who they give you like mutual benefit. There are, of course, the level of ihsan, but that's, by the way, don't go there until you've graduated the mutual benefit stage. Otherwise, you may confuse abusers with people of ihsan, and they really are abusers. Through this process of mutual benefit, you identify the good traits in people, and you see people as they are, even if we don't know them. So let me give you the case in point so we can reflect on this. In Moses' story, upon him peace, I gave the example in the podcast on dealing with our powerlessness and helplessness. God gave us the example where Moses left Egypt as a fugitive, going for days without food. His feet were bleeding, his coming to the land of the Madyan. He was near starvation, homeless, and exhausted. He saw two women who had a father who was too old to attend to the sheep and water them, so they were standing there waiting for an opportunity to water the sheep. Now, obviously, he doesn't immediately assume the worst case scenario and start to pontificate and start to project and start to assume hideous things. He doesn't hear them when they're silent. He rather asks them a clarifying question. And they tell him that their father is too old, so that's how he discovers this information. Moses, upon him peace, uses his gift of strength to aid the two women, as I said before, and water their sheep without asking for anything in return. So he doesn't take advantage of them given his difficult situation or promote himself as their protector. Like if he had a greedy nature, he could have, said, you're two women, your father's elderly, you need someone like me to protect you. Or offer his God-given gifts, but he offers his God-given gifts, and he returns under the shade of the tree. The two women, one, again, if we're looking at that reality I ask you to reflect on, were sincere about their situation. So they said, our father's an elderly man, and so they're in a situation where they're having trouble watering their sheep. And Moses, upon him peace, did not seek from them sincerity to him. Like he didn't ask them to thank me and do all of these things in return. He offered the help that they needed. However, he learns to be sincere when he seeks his need or guidance from God, not them. So this is now he's engaged in the world of ihsan. He's not mutual benefit either. If he was mutual benefit, it's perfectly fine for him to say, you have to do this because I did this for you. And since there's a mutual need and it's okay to exchange in the world of mutual benefit in such a situation. However, he engages them in the world of ihsan, where he fulfills their needs, but he asks nothing in return. He goes underneath the tree. He learns to be sincere when he seeks his need or guidance from God, not them. In that situation, they also inspired him. See, again, he's a prophet of God. Excuse me, my apologies. And what you learn is that a person can be a prophet yet be inspired by somebody, and this is how someone is not an abuser, is they're inspired by people who are, if you will, more powerless and helpless than them. So he sees how they are taking care of their elderly father, and they're just standing there in a state of reliance on God, expecting God to help them water their sheep because they cannot go and fight these big men around the well. And so he that inspired him, if you will, these two women standing there and they're taking care of their father, to go underneath the shade of a tree and to seek his need from God. Likewise, Madyan, the mother of Jesus, inspired Prophet Zechariah, upon him peace, through her actions to have firm hope and turn to God with his needs. So because he saw her also in a state of reliance on God, genuine true reliance on God, he was able to then witness, if you will, the power and glory of God, even though he was taking care of her, and he was not abusing that process, kind of like Moses did not abuse the process. So God was testing him with someone more powerless and helpless than him, and he passed the test, but he also witnessed and was inspired by Madyan when he saw how she was relying on God to fulfill her needs. So you could say those women inspired prophets. They inspired Prophet Zechariah, upon him peace, as well as Prophet Moses, upon him peace. So you see, the world of ihsan can be inspired by people who are even powerless and helpless that they are serving, and they can turn to God and accept that, and if you will, connect to God with their needs and higher and more near and more closer. So the two women near the well also sincerely take care of their elderly father. Now, to go back onto that, they were also sincere to Moses, because they returned after they went to their father and they told him the story. So they sought, of course, their father's advice. They were not acting on whim. And they came and they thanked him placing his prayer of need. So his prayer was not just words on the lips, it was holistic, like I said, and so were they. They also strove, they went to the well and they took their sheep. And then when God, used Moses to help them, they came back, because this teaches us the story that when God removes you from a misfortune, that you should always thank God. And they say whoever doesn't thank people, then they also don't thank God. So they also demonstrated their sincerity to Moses, if you will, as well as their intelligence by coming to thank him for fulfilling their need. And when the two women returned, like I said, to thank him, Moses, upon him peace, learns or can identify their sincerity to him, and not just their situation. Their actions demonstrate, again, that they're not selfish. They could have used him. They could have said, you're not, he looks like a fugitive. He's helpless. He's homeless. Let's use him. Let's turn him into an economic slave, if you will. Or they could have bargained, like some individuals will bargain. Let's tell him, if you do this, we'll pay you. Like turn him into, like I said, a slave for them, and say, serve us this and do this. So they could have also given him advice out of greed. They could have said, we could use this person every time we go to the water well. Let's offer him something and say, if you don't do this, we're going to turn you in. So they also had some sort of power, if you will, over him in a way that they could have used and to their advantage, which they didn't. From such a situation, we can also learn to strengthen our returning or turning to God, to give thanks for helping us in our time of need. So when God gets us out of a misfortune, then we turn to God and we thank him, and we thank him by also looking for ways that we can help those who are powerless and helpless in situations. And we demonstrate our sincerity to him, not just our sincerity to our situation. So as we're coming out of Ramadan, some of us will probably experience that our prayers will be answered and we will be happy. But we need to now show gratitude. Just like these two women returned to thank Moses and showed gratitude, we should also return to God when he gets us out of a misfortune or a difficult situation and show gratitude. So here now we're learning from this situation about how to be, if you will, better Muslims. You can give your thanks in words. It's also important to try to find actions that you could do to thank God and to acknowledge the situation, that if it wasn't for you helping me, if it wasn't for you, strengthening me, it wasn't for you teaching me, whatever your misfortune was, and thank God in words and also in actions. Find somebody to also help and to also fulfill their need, if you will. So acknowledge to God that moment where he helped you and give thanks, and then turn to God in repentance if you discovered anything that brought you in that situation. Let us also turn to him to thank him for bailing us out amid our misfortune. And again, through this process, we identify who are the sincere and intelligent that we can give and receive advice from. Given the manner of their approach and response, if you will, Moses, upon him peace, was able to seek advice from their father, who some scholars believe is Prophet Shu'aib, upon him peace. And through giving and receiving advice and discussing his situation that he was in, Prophet Shu'aib, as you could see, offered him a marriage to his daughter as well as a job, and now he goes from being a homeless fugitive to being under the caretaking of a prophet, where he's being prepared to now go from being a prince to being a prophet. So I hope this was beneficial, and I thank you, and please remember me and my family in your prayers. Assalamu alaikum.